Good morning, students. Today we are doing lesson 9.7, the last one in this chapter, and it is on factoring completely. So today we're just going to put everything that you've already learned into one lesson. Okay, and we don't have very many examples, but we do have something to write out. Okay, the first thing when you're factoring completely that you need to do is factor out any common monomial. Okay, so this is when you say, is there anything that everything can be divided by? So look for the number, look for variables, but you have to factor that all out. Okay, then number 2 is look for special products or special ways to factor things out. So remember, that's like your difference of squares, your perfect squares. Okay, so let's put those down. Difference of squares, perfect squares. Remember, perfect squares, you need to square the parentheses. Okay, and then number 3, you're just going to, I'm sorry, where did I, you're going to factor, well, let's say continue factoring. So if it's one where you just have to guess and check, then you may need to do that, okay? And then the last thing is check your work. Okay, so let's do all these things while we're doing our examples. So example 1 is to factor 5ax to the 5th power minus 5axy to the 4th power. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, look at number 1, factor out any common monomials. So I can already see both of those have a 5, so I'm going to factor out a 5. They both have an a, so I'm going to factor out that a. And then they both have x's, but remember when we're factoring that out, you take the lowest x, so that's just x. And they don't both have a y. So now I'm going to say what was left. So we have x to the 4th, because we already factored out the 5a right here and one of the x's. So x to the 4th minus y to the 4th. And now I need to look at this part of it and say, what can I factor this inside the parentheses? And yes, I can. That's a perfect square. So I'm going to have x squared plus y squared times x squared minus y squared. So you can't forget all your other lessons. Once you go on to the next lesson, you have to keep remembering what to do because it's all going to be on your test. Okay, so now here's the problem. And I'm going to look one more time, and I'm going to say, can I factor either one of these again? And yes, I can. This is a perfect square again. So when I'm factoring, I'm going to leave that first one because it's not a perfect square. Remember, you have to have a minus sign. And then I'm going to factor this one into x plus y times x minus y. And now I have factored completely. So you got to make sure that you go that extra distance if you have something like this. If you have that on your test, and you probably will, then and you don't finish factoring, you're going to get points taken off. A lot of points, not just a little bit of points, a lot of points. Okay, example 2. Let's factor. Okay, this kind is very, very different. So I'm going to teach you something new with this one. AM minus AN minus parentheses PM minus PN. Okay, so this one looks really weird, right? And y'all are probably looking at it going, oh, I don't know what to do. So what we're going to do is, what I want you to do is I want you to not look at this part, and we're only going to look at the first part. But I don't want to leave that. Oops, what happened? I don't want to leave that X up there, so I'm going to take that out. So I don't have my hand to cover it up, but we're only looking at this first parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to ask myself, can I take something out of that parentheses? And yes, I can. I can factor out an A. So this is what's left. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to leave that minus there, and I'm going to look at just this, and I'm going to say, can I factor something out of that? And yes, I can. I can factor out a P. Okay, so here's the tricky part. What I want you to see is see how both of these parentheses are the same? Okay, so we're going to write that just one time, and it's going to be at the end. And then I'm going to have a new parentheses in front. And that new parentheses is going to be this part. Okay, so I'm going to have A minus P. And that's the way you do factoring of those types of problems. Okay, and if I go back and I were to multiply all this out, let's just do that. Let's go ahead and check it. I have A times M and A times negative N, so that's A minus N. Then I have P times M, or minus PM, and P times negative N, so that's plus PN. Okay, so you can see that this part of it is the same as this part. And this part you might say, well, that's not exactly the same because I have a minus PN right there. But it actually is, because remember, this minus makes it a positive. And this minus goes there, which is here. Okay, so a little bit different type of problem, but it's not hard at all. Okay, last one, example 3. Actually, let's, instead of going to example 3, let's see if you can do one like that one I just did. So I'm going to call this one example 2B. Okay, and it's on your own. So let's do AX minus BX plus AY minus BY. Now this one does not have parentheses, but you can put those parentheses in, or you could just do it section by section. Okay, so go ahead and hit pause and solve this on your own. Okay, now that you're back, you should have grouped these two together and these two together. Okay, or you could have grouped the A's together and the B's together. It doesn't matter, you'll still get the same thing. So on this first one, if I take out an X, and on the second one, I'm going to take out a Y. And then you can see that these two are the same, so that's what I'm going to put at the end. And then these two, see what I double underlined, is going to go in the first parentheses. Or if you have your parentheses reversed, if you have A minus B times X plus Y, it doesn't matter, that's the same thing. Just like if I had 8 times 2 or 2 times 8, that's the same thing. Okay, hopefully that was good for you, easy enough for you. Okay, let's go to example 3. So in this one, we have x to the 4th minus 9x squared plus 8. Okay, so if I'm factoring this, I can already see that this has to be x squared and x squared, right? So now I'm going to work on the 8, and I'm trying to make 9, and it's adding, okay, but I have a minus sign, so that means I'm going to need minus minus. And so the only thing that can make 9 with 8 is an 8 and a 1, right? Okay, now remember all your, the beginning up here, right? All this stuff is you need to always continue factoring even when you're done. So once I'm done with this one, I look back at it and I say, oh, wait a minute, this is a perfect square. So I need to keep factoring. So I have x squared minus 8 times x plus 1, x minus 1. So see how I did this factoring right here? You cannot leave something not factored when it needs to be factored. And the most common one is difference of squares that kids miss. Okay, so make sure that you look for those. Okay, I'm going to give you one more. It's going to be example 3B that you can do on your own. Okay, let me find one that I'd like y'all to work on. Here's one. Let's do 2x squared minus 18y squared. Okay, I want you to hit pause and factor that one. Okay, now that you've come back, first thing you should do is look for a monomial or numbers that can be factored out. And in this one, you have 2. So I have 2 times x squared minus 9y squared. Okay, and you're not finished because that inside the parentheses is a difference of squares. So I have x plus 3y times x minus 3y. And that should have been your answer. Okay? Okay. So you should be good to get the homework done and be able to work all those types of problems. That's it.